We got a well-known human in the chair next to me, David Brown, who is right now with Lift. We'll get into your new position with the government in a little bit. Let's first of all, welcome. Thank you. Thanks for coming on, man. Welcome to 2018, as we call it, legalization. There's a lot of regulatory processes that are going to be taking place this year. But before we get into that, let's talk about your beginning, how you got started in the industry and what took place there.
Myself and Lift, I suppose it's a similar story. I was paying attention to the direction of the regulations in Canada when at the time the MMPR was emerging in 2013, 2014. Was following those regulations, was also following the emergence of things like Colorado's new laws, Washington's new laws, and I just sort of saw the direction that the industry was going here in Canada and that it was very different than we're seeing in the States, and so really began investing in understanding that direction and the gaps that will need to be filled. And that's really sort of the emergence of Lift as well, was developing a strain review platform that satisfied the consumer need of this highly regulated market.
So when you got into the industry, would you have then predicted where we would be standing now? I mean, this was an idea, it was a novelty, it was possible awareness of it, but talk to me about that 6 years.
I mean, I think there was an understanding that this is the clear direction that the industry in general is going, but there's still a lot of disbelief for someone who's been interested in cannabis for a long time. I think all of us have been expecting this, but we're also really shocked that we're here now. Right.
To which point did you have to look to states like California, or California now, I guess it would have been Colorado initially, Oregon, Washington, to look at our regulation process and to see what we could do better?
The difference really, you can look, everyone likes to look at the states. They're the big guy in the room, they get all the attention, and when Colorado legalized, Washington legalized, there was a ton of attention on that. But really, Canada's market is very different. And so understanding those differences, I think, is part of being able to succeed in this market. The States is essentially the Wild West. It was referendums that were passed that essentially legalized businesses that were already existing. What we've seen in Canada here is developing an entirely new regulatory platform, creating and licensing the producers, and then working towards licensing distribution networks, retail stores. And so it's really a polar opposite.
Step-by-step process. So in terms of, let's talk about Lift for a minute, because we're excited. We're here at Lift and big festival and expo of what it is. The evolution in the stigma in which that has decreased as we have all come into this industry, where's it went? How did we get here with 200 exhibitors?
We've seen, first of all, in Canada, we've seen medical cannabis push through activism and through the courts, and the government was essentially forced to provide a medical cannabis access system. Globally, internationally, we've seen the medical cannabis conversation get pushed into the forefront. A lot of expanding things within the industry in the United States have helped that. Charlotte's Web, Sanjay Gupta and his specials have helped push it into the forefront. But the medical cannabis community here in Canada and the legal emerging licensed producer system has done a lot to bring credibility to medical cannabis. And the gatekeepers of medical cannabis in Canada are physicians. And so if you aren't convincing physicians that your product is a real product, then you aren't going to give patients that access. So it's that professional nature of the existing medical cannabis industry that I think has really pushed things forward, helped remove a lot of the stigma, allowing patients to have conversations with their doctors, allowing doctors to be open to those conversations, and doctors to better understand the system as it exists today.
So in terms of, I mean, again, you've interviewed a lot of researchers and people in the medical community. That stigma has evolved. It's gotten better. They're able to do more research. Where is it going come July?
Medical cannabis or cannabis in general?
Let's talk about the research behind it, being able to research it.
The more sources for federally legal cannabis, be it in Canada or around the world, offers more opportunities for researchers to do their work. In the United States right now, there are a lot of limitations on those researchers that don't exist in Canada because it's a legal product in Canada. Even though it's state legal, it's still not federally legal in the United States. And so we're already seeing more licensed producers sponsoring clinical research. We will see a lot more of that. And you're going to see, I think, once the emergence of the recreational market, I think you will actually see more division between that recreational and medical space, and you're going to see more of a focus on very specific medical products, so titrated oils, sprays, dissolvable tabs, creams, capsules, things like that that give doctors more familiarity and more comfort prescribing things. So right now, doctors to prescribe medical cannabis in Canada, they're essentially prescribing grams per day. But what we're moving towards with a lot more of these products, capsules and oils and things like that, is doctors being able to prescribe specific milligrams of cannabinoids, of THC, of CBD per day. And so it's that sort of translation into something that doctors understand that also provides more of an opportunity for that product to be seen as a legitimate medical product along with anything else.
Yeah, they're more comfortable in this environment of pharmaceutical grade technology, right? Which makes sense.
Absolutely. You don't prescribe, generally speaking, a physician doesn't prescribe a root or a gram of an herb. They prescribe the active ingredients. And so as we move towards more standardized products, those active ingredients become at the forefront, and doctors have a lot more familiarity and comfort with that.
Right. Now, you're in your final days here at Lift, and so one of the things I want to talk to you about is your new position with the government. And as we just alluded to, I can't pronounce it correctly all the time, and you're still trying to memorize it. So tell us about what you're doing.
My new role will be as a senior policy advisor for the Cannabis Legalization and Regulation Secretariat. And so that's the department under Health Canada that is seeking to put together these regulations that will eventually be regulating the emerging industry.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
In terms of the government asking to actually actively engage with more stakeholders, more people that are familiar with the community, it's such a refreshing thing coming to July, wouldn't you say?
It is, and as my role at Lift as a communications director and editor-in-chief of Lift News, I've been reporting, sort of on this side of the thing and watching the regulator change over time. And when I talk to producers, when I talk to stakeholders, applicants within the system, they all talk about sort of a night and day change between the old administration and the new administration. And there's really seems to be, I don't want to say just an urgency, but an eagerness to get this right. There's an understanding, there's a bit of a tight timeline. There's an understanding of how historic this legislation is. I think people are very excited. And I think the fact that they're reaching out to folks like me and a lot of other folks, they recognize that there's a lot to be done to get this right, and there needs to be new, innovative ways of getting there.
So what's the responsibility then of, say, a licensed producer to provide that public awareness, with that messaging, this stigma-breaking messaging that we're starting to see in terms of what you're up to now? How are you working to engage those?
How am I within my new position,
or
within
what? The new position.
There's a lot of unknowns, to be honest. I'm going to be diving, my position starts on Monday, I'm going to really be diving in, and there's a whole lot of unknowns.
But the LPs are responsible to at least engage in public awareness, right?
Absolutely, and I think we're seeing the benefits of that when we've talked about the removing of stigma. There's a shift occurring in the industry right now, and I think there's some from maybe the old culture who bemoan it because it's seen, understandably, it's seen as sort of a corporatization of something that has largely been a sort of unregulated black market, almost kind of a Wild West. But with that also comes that credibility. These are well-financed companies. These are companies interested in developing a respected product. And I think that really moves all of us forward because legalization isn't about normalizing prohibition culture. It's about bringing something into the light and introducing it to people who otherwise wouldn't want to be associated with some of those stigmas that used to exist.
Right. So talking to some of these people within the LP model, for instance, it's funny because people still call it the Wild Wild West, but as you look around the room, even downstairs and upstairs, it is filled with people with complete knowledge in the areas of this. How is that adapted, and is it really going to, are we going to hit July? Is that going to happen, July?
I sure hope so.
I sure hope so too. David, I appreciate it. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.